and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris.
I'm Sharaad Kuttan.
You're watching Consider This, the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Over the weekend, it was announced that two PKR MPs had decided to leave the party and support the government of Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin as independents. Larry Sng, MP of Julau in Sarawak, and Stephen Chung, MP of Tebrau in Johor, signed statutory declarations of support for the Perikatan National Government. One of the MPs, Larry Sng, joins us on the show now. Larry, good evening. You said that your decision to quit PKR it was made after you had consulted your voters. You said that you described it as a collective decision. Can you tell us what you discussed with your constituents? I mean, how you arrived at this decision?
Okay, thank you, Melissa. Well, we had in-person meetings with the core supporters of PKR from representatives from each and every area within my constituency, and this was done over a period of 3 weeks. And during this course, I gave them the option. I laid down the cards in front of them on what is our present position and what are the possible options that we could look into moving forward. And given those discussions, in-person meetings, the overwhelming response was leave PKR and to support the government of the day. I mean, my supporters, some of them have been with PKR for over 20 years, And for me, their decision is, in a way, is a bit of a surprise. And I feel reassured that since this is the support of the people and we are making this decision together, it is the right decision. And also looking back at the demographics of the constituency, it is 95% Bumiputra. It is the poorest constituency in Malaysia, and we lack many basic amenities, basic infrastructure, roads, telecommunication tower, access to clean water, etc. So for us, the priority is to make sure that our election promises are being delivered, to ensure that the livelihoods of the people living in the rural constituency are able to receive the benefit of development.
Larry, if you had some time to discuss this with your constituents, was this a decision that was a long time in the making? Was this not a sudden decision, but one that was considered and deliberated on?
I would say that this decision is something. This discussion was initiated over a period of a few weeks. I would say a long time. For most of the good part of the year, when we were in opposition, we were actually very much hoping that we could actually change of government, get back into government, and also to continue the policies and development programs that we have planned for the constituency. However, after much politicking, canvassing for support, etc., people get disillusioned, and many people on the ground are also fed up of waiting. Because of that, we have come to a decision. Initially, it started with private discussions with one or two individuals, and having to find consensus, we decided to reach out to rest of our supporters, widen the net to get their collective opinions.
And Larry, can I interject here? I mean, you are said to be one of the richest MPs. This is a constituency that your father was in, and I believe your grandfather as well. And yet you describe it as one of the poorest constituencies in Malaysia. What does it say about your ability to actually represent and change the fate of those who you serve?
Well, for a start, my grandfather was actually representing a different constituency, not this constituency of Julau. And second of all, my father was an MP in 1995 to 1999, which is just a one-term MP. And he was replaced by the former incumbent, who was here for 20 years. I would say that the process of development, the process of developing this area is not easy. For a start, it's the terrain. The terrain is hilly. There are many different riverine tributaries, and people are actually scattered, over a landmass of the size of Perlis and Malacca together. So for us to develop this constituency, we need to have sufficient allocation. And we cannot compare the sort of allocation that is given to urban areas, whereby roads are already being developed, infrastructure is already in place, and use that as a benchmark to compare with rural constituencies where people may live 20 kilometers from one another.
Okay, but Larry, can I ask you, was this the same reason? Because I know you were elected as an independent. Was this the reason that you aligned yourself with Pakatan Harapan? I mean, well, so is the choice of alignment at the federal level all about who is the government of the day?
Well, when I campaigned during the election in 2018, I made two election. Well, my election slogan was to replace the old with the new, and in my campaign, I actually said that whoever is the government of the day, that's where we'll be. So yes, in a way, So because of that, after having won the election in 2018, Pakatan Harapan approached me through PKR and invited me to be a member of their party, and for that reason, I agreed. Together with other two independent MPs who also won their seats.
Right, Larry. Sometimes when when we're reading headlines about defections or or MPs leaving parties that they are affiliated with, the reaction is often one of betrayal, one of jumping, frog jumping, or switching sides. How is it that you want this? How is it that you'd like? What context would you like to give to this? As opposed, do you see it as a betrayal of your constituencies, despite I know you're saying that you had deliberations with them?
No, actually, I think my constituents are very happy with my decision today. I've been receiving numerous calls from supporters. Some of the supporters have left me when Pakatan Harapan government collapsed, and they have all come back to renew their support and to tell me that I've done the right thing. Personally, on a personal note, I do believe that party hopping is not a practice which I would endorse. In fact, if there was any anti-hopping legislation, I would support it. But I do put a caveat in the sense that as an independent which is not aligned to any political party during election has the right to choose which party that they would like to be part of or to be affiliated during the course of the term they were elected, because they did not make any promises, during election that they would be part of any particular coalition. And I believe that the federal constitution also supports that, to allow MPs to make the freedom of choice to move from party to party.
Larry, beyond the question of the welfare of your constituents, there are national issues, right? And so the question of aligning with Pakatan Harapan had to do with their reform agenda, at least in the minds of many people. What about that dimension of politics? You're now supporting the government of Muhyiddin Yassin. The reform agenda is essentially stalled, and in fact, when it comes to GLCs and GLICs, it's in reverse. Do you support the politics and the policies of the Perikatan National Government, which are very the contrast with the Pakatan Harapan government?
I was elected on a campaign not based on a campaign of reform. In fact, my election campaign was also based on a promise that we will bring further development for the constituency. Now, whoever is in government...
You're a federal lawmaker, and that means you should be concerned with agendas of a national level, isn't it? Isn't that true? I mean, you're not a municipal council worker.
No, I'm talking about during the election campaign in 2018. I came into politics, federal politics, on the basis that we will bring further development to the people of the constituency. The issue of the issue and agenda of reform was never raised, was never an election promise, and even after having joined Pakatan Harapan, it was never really an issue or a issue of high priority in rural constituencies. Unfortunately, that is the situation. Everyone still places development first and foremost on the top of the agenda. So, I mean, from a national politics perspective, of course, personally, I do support the use of reform. But when it comes down to the constituency level in rural Sarawak, that doesn't seem to be as high a priority to the people.
Larry, thank you so much for joining us on the show and sharing your perspectives with us tonight. We appreciate your time. We're going to take a quick break here on Consider This, but more on this topic in just a couple minutes. Stay tuned. Hi, welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris. With me is Sharaad Kuttan. Let's continue our conversation about the recent defections of 2 PKR MPs and its impact on constituents, as well as state and national level politics. James Chin joins us now. He's a professor of Asian Studies at the Asia Institute at University of Tasmania in Australia. James, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Julau MP Larry Sng said that he is serving his constituents by switching sides, and he claimed that it was because of a lack of funds that was provided to him and his constituents because he was part of the opposition. Now, this rationale, this explanation seems to have been used before in previous defections. Is this an argument, or is this a reason that holds merit, that has merit, James?
Well, I think you're right. This has been the excuse used by everybody who defects to the government. So the amount they're talking about is basically, in terms of Sabah and Sarawak, is the 1 million Minor Rural Development Fund. But in this case, I think the bigger issue is not so much the funding part, but it's the fact that he doesn't fit in very nicely with PKR Sarawak. So what do I mean by that was that you have to remember he was not elected on a PKR ticket. He stood as an independent, and he only joined PKR after the last general elections. Secondly, he became an accidental leader because Barubian, as you know, the previous PKR leader from Sarawak, defected Azmin Ali to the new Berita national government. So they brought him in as a leader, and he never fitted very well with the PKR culture or the way of doing things in Sarawak. Part of it is the fact that there was a significant block of PKR Sarawak people against him. And the reason is because many of those people saw PKR Sarawak as a Dayak or non-Muslim Bumiputera majority party. So they wanted a Dayak person to head the party. So he was facing opposition. And you have to remember, he was just made leader recently, and he needed to get the party into shape for the next general election. And I think with all these problems in the party, with the defections and all this, I think he felt that it was just too hard to get the party in shape for the upcoming Sarawak elections. So if I were to put myself in these shoes, I'll probably jump now so that if PKR does badly in the next Sarawak election, I won't get the blame. So I really don't blame him for stepping out of PKR. And also, you have to remember, he did try to resign 2 months back. So the fact that he was trying to get out of PKR is not a big secret. It was an open secret in Sarawak. In the case of Stephen in Johor, I think it was the same issue. He had problems working with PKR Johor and the national leadership. And again, because the West Malaysian political situation is slightly different, different set of dynamics. In Johor, I think they really reach out to him. As you know, Johor is a frontline state for the Prime Minister. He himself comes from Johor. So I think there was a lot of detailed negotiations on Stephen's part to move over to the government.
James, if I could we just focus on Sarawak for a while, because many observers say there are unique features of Sarawak politics that many of us in West Malaysia would don't understand. And with Larry, we have a kind of family history and, in fact, a shift between various parties. But what I find quite interesting, James, you can help us understand this, is why did PKR choose him? If he was somebody who didn't fit in well, why choose him to lead the party in Sarawak?
Sure, you have to remember after the defection of Barubian and 2 other PKR, there was only basically 2 MPs left in PKR Sarawak, the MP for Miri, Michael Teo, and Larry Sng. I think Michael Teo also have problems working within inside the party, and it was generally felt that Michael Teo was not interested in federal politics. For a very long time, Michael Teo was looking for opportunity to come down to the state level. And also you have to remember Larry's link with Anwar Ibrahim's family go back a long way. His father, Sng Senior, Sng Jihua, the former politicians, is also very close to Anwar. So if you speak to the people in PKR, they'll probably tell you that because of the internal dynamics, the lack of leadership, and the personal links between the father, Anwar Ibrahim, and all this added up together to appoint him the leader of PKR Sarawak.
Well, James, then what is the current situation of PKR right now in Sarawak? I mean, are they still relevant there? You know, with Larry's defection, they're only left with 1 MP, as you mentioned, Miri Representative Dr. Michael Teo there. Is PKR still in any way relevant?
Well, of course, PKR is relevant. If you look at the number of votes they got in 2018, obviously they have some support. The problem now is that you need to find a very strong leader to get the party into shape, because the state election and maybe the federal election is only a few months away. There are some young committed members in PKR who are doing really good work. For example, a couple of people running up and down up in the Baram who stand a very good chance. But the problem is when Baru left the party, he took the bulk of the election machinery in places like Kuching and probably some area outside of Cebu. He took it with him. So it takes time to rebuild those parties. And the group that was marginalized by Barubian, for example, Dominic Ng's group, are trying to come back and rebuild the PKR structure in Kuching. But all this takes time, takes resources. But the most important thing is that you need a statewide leader who's acceptable to everybody. But unfortunately, because of the racial situation in Malaysia or Sarawak, you need a very strong Dayak or Iban leader to lead PKR Sarawak if you really want to mount a serious challenge to GPS.
James, with the pledge to support Muhyiddin, does Larry become now naturally part of the GPS component of the Perikatan Plus government, or does he stand alone, separate from GPS?
No, my understanding is he's already made up his mind on which party to join, but he's waiting for the right moment to announce it. The way it works with defections is that unless you got your deal done completely up front, you try to hold a bit back to negotiate for more concessions. So I suspect he's in the process of negotiating with the new party he wants to join for concessions and what have you. So he'll probably announce it very soon. But yes, it doesn't matter which party he joins, he'll be part of the group that will support Muhyiddin. I think it's important for your viewers to understand that this support for Muhyiddin is basically personal support, and therefore it's linked to this upcoming sitting of parliament. So which party he joined, of course, will be part of Berita National. But more importantly, if you look at the way the letter is written when he and Stephen met with the Prime Minister, the way it's written is basically personal support for Muhyiddin to stay on as the Prime Minister of Malaysia.
Right. James, can I talk to you about defections in a wider sense? I mean, you said a bit earlier that it was not a surprise to learn of Larry Sng's defection. It was an open secret, and you talked about both MPs not getting along with their political peers. Can I ask you about a comment made by PKR Secretary General Saifuddin Nasution? And he said that, you know, because there's the possible resumption of parliament, certain parties might have stepped up their efforts to convince opposition MPs to jump ship. And he used the phrase threat and bait approach. You know, it could be, you know, like kind of stick approach where you have threats of, income tax issues, police investigations, MAC probes, things like that, or incentives where you have project offers and GLC positions. What's your understanding of the efforts to convince opposition MPs to jump ship?
Well, I think it's a bit of everything. I think in terms of MPs jumping to governing party, of course, the biggest item is that once you're part of the government, this gives you immediate access to the civil service. This means you can get things done on the ground level and provide better services to the people who voted for you. But also, it's also part of this game that, the way it works in the Malaysian political system is that if you're not part of the government, nobody listens to you. So that's the reason why MPs, especially those serving in rural isolated areas, they have to be part of the government. Because in those areas, in the rural areas, right, the people who actually deliver services to the ordinary voters or the people living in those places is the civil service. So I would say that access to the civil service, access to resources, these are the prime reasons. Of course, the other reason is things like personal incentive. And also some people want to jump because they just can't get along with the party they got in. I can, remember a few cases where people also jump because part of the reason was that they never expected to be elected. So when they get into the position of being elected, the YB, they felt that, it is really their role to make sure that they get the best deal for their voters. And also a lot of them also, you have to remember, those accidental YBs, they need to move fairly quickly because they're already thinking about the next election because they want to be re-elected. And if you're a brand new YB, it's a good chance for you to move around to get resources because you want your voters to know that you can actually get things done so you get re-elected.
James, there's the word betrayal that gets bandied about every time this kind of news comes out. Is that mistaken? I mean, can you sell out if you never bought into the values or principles or anything of that matter with the political parties that you join?
Well, I think you can't use it across the board. The way I look at it is that this is got to do with the realities of Malaysian politics. I always tell people that in terms of Malaysian politics, the most important criteria for a successful politician is hypocrisy. You must be able to move left and right, up and down, all over the place. I think it's very, very difficult to force our politicians to walk on the straight line. This is the reality of living in a plural society, in a political system where, how should I put it, where rules it's not a rules-based political system. It's a political system based on personal links and access to resources, stack capture, all that sort of thing. So because of that, I think it's very difficult. Like I said, if you're a junior politician, it's very difficult for you to walk a straight line because you need to build up your political capital. So that's the reason why very often, if you look at the list of people jumping, right, it's usually people who are not holding any posts, who are just the ordinary backbenchers. Of course, you do get people, senior people jumping, but my point is that the overwhelming majority of people who jump, if you look at it, say in the last 20 years, the majority of them are backbenchers.
James, zooming out and looking at how this impacts federal level politics, do the defections mean that Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin's position is safe for now?
No. I think there's been a lot of misinformation. Muhyiddin's position is really not dependent on the number of people he can engineer to defect to his party or PPBM. I think his position is really up to UMNO. Right now, UMNO is probably the biggest bloc, and especially UMNO with PAS. So if UMNO were to pull out, and it's really interesting to see the upcoming UMNO General Assembly at the end of March, if UMNO were to pull out, there's no way he can recover the majority. And also, you have to remember, a lot of people forget this point. He can take in people into PPBM, but the non-Bumiputera MPs will be very difficult for them to join PPBM because under their current constitution, they can't be full members of PPBM. So he's got to create opportunities for them to jump to other parties. So that's the reason why you can see that Perikatan Nasional is in the process of trying to replicate the Barisan Nasional model. which is one core Malay party, which is Bersatu, and you have multiple other parties. So, for example, Gerakan has joined. So you can see that it is not as easy as people think. But my take is that his political future really rests on UMNO. If UMNO were to pull out, there's no way he can recover that majority quickly.
James, thank you so much for speaking with us and helping provide some context to the headlines that we've been reading. We appreciate your insights. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for you on this episode of Consider This. Don't forget to get your latest news and COVID-19 updates on astroawani.com and the Astro Awani app. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan, signing off for the evening.
Thank you so much for watching, and good night.